UFC 269 is just around the corner, and the pay-per-view buys for November's UFC 268 are in. The event, headlined by Colby Covington and welterweight king Kamaru Usman, did particularly well, as it also featured one of the promotion's most exciting fighters, Justin Gaethje. Stay with us, as today we're looking at those numbers from UFC 268 and the most successful UFC pay-per-views in history. So let's jump straight in and have a look at those numbers from 268. The event on November 4th drew a reported 700,000 viewers in the United States alone. This checks in as the fourth highest selling pay-per-view event of the year so far. This figure only includes fans in the USA and does not cover international purchases nor the huge illegal streaming market. As we mentioned earlier, the card saw the Nigeria Nightmare Kamaru Usman retain his title after being taken the distance by Colby Chaos Covington. Also on the card was the super popular Justin Gaethje, who squared off and won a decision against Michael Chandler. The fight was a 3-round war, and round 1 could possibly be the best round of the UFC's year so far. Thug Rose Namajunas retained her title against China's Zhang Weili, also going the distance, and Ecuadorian featherweight Marlon Chito Vera delivered a contender for knockout of the year, beating the ever-game Frankie Edgar with a front kick from hell straight into the former champ's face. UFC 268 was beaten out in pay-per-view buys by UFC 257 in January, which saw the second fight between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier with 1.6 million buys. Also ahead of 268 were UFC 264, which saw McGregor and Poirier do battle again, and UFC 259, which featured the light heavyweight debut of Israel Adesanya. Let's look at the 10 highest ranking UFC pay-per-views of all time now, starting with UFC 207 at number 10. On Friday, December 30th, 2016, Ronda Rousey and Amanda Nunes went to war for the women's UFC bantamweight title, in which Nunes stopped Rousey inside of the first round. Also on the card was the men's bantamweight title fight between long feuding fighters Dominic Cruz and Cody Garbrandt. Garbrandt scored a decision win over the champion, but would relinquish the belt in his very next fight with TJ Dillashaw. Dillashaw was also on the card at 207, delivering a one-sided performance and outclassing John Lineker. Korean fighter Dong Hyun Kim scored a decision win against Tarek Safadine, and Louis Smolka was taken the distance by Ray Borg, with New Mexico fighter Borg coming out on top. And at 9, it's Ronda again. UFC 193, Rousey vs. Holm did the exact same amount of pay-per-view buys as 207, 1.1 million, and brought in $60 million for the promotion, which isn't bad, right? The ladies took center stage in this one as Holmes shocked the world and stopped Rousey in round 2 after outclassing her with her boxing ability before delivering a ferocious head kick KO. Joanna Jędrzejczyk faced off against Valerie Letourneau in the co-main event of the evening, with the Polish fighter scoring an impressive decision win against the Canadian Letourneau. Mark Hunt again demonstrated his brutal power by finishing Antonio Silva in round 1, and feature middleweight champ Robert Whittaker won against Uriah Hall in a decision victory. The main card was opened by Jared Rosholt, who took Stefan Struve the distance in the heavyweight division. We're headed back to 2010 next with UFC 116, and at number 8. 116 saw the return of fan favorite Brock Lesnar to the octagon, which bumped up the pay-per-view number significantly. This one saw 1.16 million people sign up, making the company $55 million. The event saw Lesnar retain his heavyweight title against Shane Carwin, winning by arm triangle choke in the second round. Chris Lieben also defeated Japanese-Korean fighter Yoshihiro Akiyama via submission, which won Fight of the Night. Chris Lytle then tapped out Matt Brown in the second round of their bout, and the card was completed with wins for UFC pioneer Stephan Bonner and George Sotiropoulos. UFC 200's at number 7. Stay tuned. 200 was a super stacked card, which was initially supposed to feature Nate Diaz taking on Conor McGregor, but that fight was subsequently moved. The event did 1.2 million pay-per-view buys, making a cool $71 million for the outgoing Fertitta brothers before their sale was completed by the Zuffa Group. The event was headlined by Amanda Nunes and Miesha Tate, with the Brazilian scoring rear naked choke win in the first round to defend her title. Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt's fight ended no contest, while in the light heavyweight division, Daniel Cormier defeated Anderson Silva, who at that point in his career was a shadow of his former self. Also on the card was the second fight between recently deposed featherweight champion Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar, with Aldo coming out on top and Cain Velasquez knocking out Travis Brown. At 6, we have another McGregor card, UFC 205. UFC 205 made history as the first event held in New York after the ban on MMA was lifted. It was also unique as it featured 3 world title fights. The event was viewed by 1.3 million people and earned Dana White and the company a pretty nice sum of $83 million. You know it's a stacked undercard when feature champ Khabib Nurmagomedov is on the preliminary card. McGregor made history becoming the first ever man in UFC history to be a champion of 2 divisions at one time, lightweight and featherweight. He put on a clinic in dispatching then champ Eddie Alvarez, who now turns out for 1 championship. Championship. 205 also featured middleweights Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Tyrone Woodley doing battle for the belt, which ended up in a pulsating draw. The crowd also featured another win for Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who scored a decision win, much the same as Raquel Pennington's victory over Miesha Tate. The main card was completed by Yoel Romero's knockout of Chris Weidman in the third round. UFC 194 is next. Another one on this list to feature Conor McGregor. 194 was the rescheduled bout between these two, which was initially supposed to be at UFC 189. The event did 1.4 million pay-per-view buys and netted the UFC $80 million. This was the event in which Conor McGregor finally properly announced himself with a world title after months and months of goading Brazilian champ Jose Aldo. It clearly worked, too. The longtime champ rushed out at McGregor, something which was very uncharacteristic for him, and McGregor capitalized, knocking the champ out in 13 seconds, breaking the record for the fastest ever title win. The event also featured Luke Rockhold, who knocked out Chris Weidman for the middleweight belt. Completing the card were Damian Maia, Max Holloway, and Yoel Romero, who all won decision victories. At number 4 is UFC 196. Would you believe it? Another Conor McGregor fight, which proves to us why Dana was right to invest so much in the Irishman. The event made the promotion $80 million, with 1.5 million people tuning in to see McGregor take on Nate Diaz. This was the first fight between the pair, with Diaz coming out on top with a rear naked choke win after McGregor appeared to gas early. Miesha Tate finally struck gold after pulling off an unlikely win over Holly Holm after largely being dominated throughout most of the fight, via rear naked choke in the 5th and final round. Amanda Nunes scored a decision win over future champ Valentina Shevchenko, and there was also decision wins for Ilir Latifi and Corey Anderson. And at 3, it's UFC 100. UFC 100 saw more than 1.6 million fans tune in for a super stacked card with 2 World Championship fights, making a profit of $82 million. On the main card, Yoshihiro Akiyama was first out, defeating Alan Belcher via split decision. John Fitch and GSP also scored decision wins before there were big knockout wins for Dan Henderson against Michael Bisping, who are facing off against each other on that year's season of The Ultimate Fighter, and Brock Lesnar against Frank Mir in a rematch of their UFC 81 bout. At 2, we have UFC 202. Stay where you are. You might be surprised to find out that Conor McGregor features next. Who would have guessed? UFC 202 had 1.65 million viewers and made the company $90 million. It was the rematch between McGregor and Nate Diaz. After the American had tapped McGregor in their first fight, McGregor scored a decision victory over Diaz. The other fights on the main card all finished via knockout or TKO, with Anthony Rumble Johnson finishing Glover Teixeira, Donald Cerrone knocking out Rick Story with a trademark head kick. Mike Perry and Tim Means also delivered big knockout wins. And your biggest pay-per-view event of all time is UFC 229. This one is comfortably at the top of the list with 2.4 million buys and earning the UFC a cool $180 million. And guess what? It's McGregor again. This time with his long-anticipated battle with Nurmagomedov, who came out on top and then jumped the fence to attack McGregor's team. Crazy! Also on the card was a brutal win for Tony Ferguson over Anthony Pettis, Dominic Reyes going the distance to defeat Ovince St. Preux, Derek Lewis delivering a huge knockout of Alexander Volkov, and Michelle Watterson beating Felice Herrig. Which event was your favorite in UFC history? Let us know below. And as always, thanks for tuning in today, guys, and remember to stop by next time. If you want to do us a solid, feel free to share this video with any friends who you think might be interested. Bye, guys.